The old Grandview Grand Hotel loomed against the stormy night sky like a forgotten giant from another era. Lightning cracked across the darkness, illuminating the peeling paint and broken windows of what was once the most luxurious resort on the California coast. Inside the Mystery Machine, parked at the overgrown entrance, Shaggy nervously clutched his stomach as thunder rumbled overhead. Like, why does every mystery have to happen during a thunderstorm? Shaggy whimpered, his voice trembling. Can't we investigate a haunted ice cream parlor on a sunny day? Re-cream Rawler! Scooby-Doo barked hopefully, his tail wagging at the mere thought. Velma adjusted her glasses, studying the faded newspaper clipping in her hands. According to this article from 1985, the Grandview Grand was worth over $50 million at its peak. Celebrities, millionaires, even royalty stayed here. Then, 40 years ago, it shut down overnight. No explanation. No bankruptcy filing. Nothing. And now, Fred added, checking his trap building supplies in the back, the current owner, Mr. Pemberton, claims a ghostly investor is haunting the place, scaring away every contractor who tries to renovate. He says the ghost deposits old currency into the hotel's safe every night, money from the 1920s. Daphne's eyes widened with intrigue. A ghost who makes deposits instead of withdrawals? That's definitely unusual. Most haunted places involve things being stolen, not added. The wind howled through the broken entrance doors, carrying with it the musty smell of decades-old carpet and something else, lavender perfume, mixed with the metallic scent of old coins. A chandelier swayed in the abandoned lobby, its crystals tinkling like ghostly wind chimes. Then, echoing through the marble halls, came a sound that made everyone freeze. The mechanical clicking of an old cash register, followed by a woman's ethereal laugh. Like, did anyone else hear that? Shaggy's teeth chattered. Because I'm voting, we didn't hear that, and we go home. Rono. Scooby agreed, already reaching for the door handle. But before they could escape, a translucent figure materialized in the hotel's grand entrance. A woman in a shimmering 1920s flapper dress, her appearance flickering like an old film projection. She pointed one ghostly finger directly at the Mystery Machine. Leave this place. Her voice boomed, unnaturally amplified. The fortune buried here belongs to the past. Those who seek it will pay the ultimate price. The phantom investor vanished as quickly as she appeared, but not before a shower of old $20 bills, yellowed with age, fluttered down from nowhere, scattering across the cracked driveway. Velma immediately jumped out to examine one, her analytical mind already working. Fascinating, she muttered, holding the bill up to her flashlight. This is a 1928 $20 bill. If authentic, each of these could be worth hundreds to collectors. But why would a ghost be leaving valuable currency around? Fred's expression turned serious. Whatever's happening here involves real money and real danger. Someone doesn't want this hotel reopened, and I bet it has nothing to do with ghosts and everything to do with fortune. Gang, we've got a mystery to solve, and maybe a lesson about how valuable things from the past can be if you know their true worth. Like, the only thing I want to be worth is worth going home. Shaggy protested, but the gang was already heading toward the haunted hotel, flashlights cutting through the darkness, ready to uncover the millionaire's secret that someone or something was desperate to keep buried. The lobby of the Grandview Grand Hotel was a time capsule of faded elegance. Dust motes danced in the beams of their flashlights, revealing ornate molding on the ceiling, a massive marble staircase that curved upward into darkness, and furniture covered in white sheets like sleeping ghosts. The smell was overwhelming, decades of trapped air, mildew, rotting wood, and that persistent hint of vintage perfume. According to Mr. Pemberton's email, Velma said, pulling out her tablet, the hotel closed in 1985 after the original owner, Madame Evangeline Sinclair, disappeared without a trace. She was a financial genius, started as a maid here in the 1920s, and eventually bought the entire property through savvy investments and careful savings. Daphne ran her finger along a dusty reception desk, examining the antique brass bell that sat atop it. A maid who became a millionaire hotel owner? That's incredibly inspiring. She must have been brilliant with money. And patient, Velma added. Records show she saved every penny she earned for 15 years before making her first investment in the stock market, right before the 1929 crash, ironically. But she'd invested in essential goods companies that people needed regardless of the economy. Smart diversification. Like, I could diversify right into a sandwich shop, Shaggy said, rummaging through his backpack. Speaking of which ... He pulled out a submarine sandwich the size of his forearm. I spent my last $20 on this beauty. Totally worth it. Velma sighed. Shaggy, that's exactly the kind of impulsive spending that keeps people from building wealth. If you'd saved that $20 and invested it wisely, with compound interest over time, compound interest doesn't taste like salami and pickles. Velma, Shaggy countered, taking an enormous bite. Ramage, Scooby barked, eyeing the sandwich hungrily. Fred was examining a faded floor plan mounted behind glass on the wall. Look at this. The hotel had everything. Ballrooms, restaurants, a theater, even a bank branch right here on the ground floor. Madame Sinclair basically created a self-contained economic ecosystem. As they explored deeper into the lobby, Daphne noticed something odd about one of the sheet-covered furniture pieces. Unlike the others, which were thick with dust, this one looked recently disturbed. She carefully lifted the corner of the sheet to reveal an antique writing desk. On its surface lay a leather-bound ledger, open to a page filled with neat handwriting and numbers. "Guys, look at this," Daphne called out. The gang gathered around as Velma examined the ledger with growing excitement. "This is incredible. These are Madame Sinclair's personal financial records. Income, expenses, investments, everything meticulously documented. And look at this entry from March 1985, just before the hotel closed. Final deposit secured in vault. Fortune protected from unworthy hands. Only those who understand true value will find it." True value, Fred pondered. What does that mean? Before anyone could theorize, a loud crash echoed from somewhere above them, followed by the sound of heavy footsteps running across the second-floor hallway. Everyone froze. "Like, maybe it's a really industrious rat," Shaggy suggested hopefully. "A rat with excellent posture and large feet." "Rats don't wear heels," Velma whispered, pointing to the ceiling where distinct footstep sounds click-clack moved deliberately across the floorboards above them. Then came that voice again, filling the entire lobby with its otherworldly resonance. "Leave the ledger. Leave this place. The fortune is mine." The phantom investor materialized at the top of the grand staircase, her translucent form glowing with an eerie greenish light. She raised both arms dramatically, and suddenly, old coins began pelting down the staircase like metallic hail quarters, half-dollars, and silver dollars from decades past, clattering and bouncing across the marble floor. "Zoinks!" Shaggy yelped, accidentally tossing his sandwich into the air as he dove for cover behind the reception desk. Scooby caught the sandwich mid-flight, swallowing it in one gulp before joining Shaggy in hiding. The ghost descended the staircase, her feet not quite touching the steps, coins continuing to rain down with each movement. As she reached the bottom, she pointed at the ledger on the desk. That knowledge belongs to the past. Those who chase money without understanding its true worth are doomed to lose everything. With a dramatic gesture, she vanished in a swirl of green mist, leaving behind only the scattered coins and a lingering scent of lavender. Once they were certain the ghost was gone, Velma began collecting some of the coins, examining them closely. 1923 silver dollar, 1935 half-dollar. These are all from the same era as Madame Sinclair's prime. But here's what's interesting. These coins, if genuine, are worth far more than their face value to collectors. This 1923 silver dollar could be worth $50 to $100. So the ghost is literally throwing money at us to scare us away? Daphne asked, puzzled. That seems counterintuitive. Exactly, Fred said, his detective instincts kicking in. Which means either this ghost doesn't understand economics, or ... quotes, he paused meaningfully. This isn't really a ghost at all. Someone wants us to think this place is haunted, but they're making mistakes. Shaggy peeked out from behind the desk. Like, can we discuss these mistakes from outside? Preferably from another state. No way, Fred said firmly. We're gonna split up and search this hotel. Velma, Daphne, and I will check out the old bank vault in the basement. Shaggy, you and Scooby explore the second floor and see if you can find where those footsteps came from. Why do we always get the scary jobs? Shaggy whimpered. Because you two have a special talent for accidentally stumbling into exactly the right clues, Velma said with a slight smile. Plus, if there's a kitchen up there, you'll definitely find it. Kitchen? Scooby's ears perked up. Yeah, like, maybe investigating won't be so bad after all, Shaggy reconsidered, his stomach overruling his fear. As the gang prepared to split up, Velma held up the ledger. Whatever Madame Sinclair hid here, she wanted to make sure only someone who understood true value could find it. That's not just about money. It's about understanding what really matters and how to manage resources wisely. This mystery is going to teach us more than just who's behind the haunting. Fred nodded, checking his flashlight. Everyone be careful. Whoever is doing this is using real valuables to create their haunting, which means they have access to serious money, and they are desperate to keep whatever secret this hotel holds. With that, the gang split up, heading into the dark corridors of the Grandview Grand Hotel, each group carrying their flashlights and their determination to solve the mystery. Behind them, in the shadows of the lobby, a figure watched silently, making notes in a small book before disappearing back into the darkness. The hunt for Madame Sinclair's millionaire secret had officially begun, and nothing, not even ghosts throwing valuable coins, was going to stop the Mystery Inc. gang from uncovering the truth about the haunted hotel and the fortune hidden within its walls. The basement of the Grandview Grand Hotel smelled like a century of forgotten secrets, damp concrete, rusted metal, and the faint chemical scent of old paper currency. Fred led the way down the creaking wooden stairs, his flashlight beam cutting through cobwebs that hung like curtains in the narrow stairwell. Velma followed close behind, her tablet illuminating their path with its blue glow, while Daphne brought up the rear, her keen eyes scanning every detail. According to the building plans, Velma said, navigating on her tablet, the bank vault should be at the end of this main corridor. Madame Sinclair had it installed in 1930, right after the stock market crash. While everyone else was panicking, she was securing her assets. That's what financial experts call crisis planning, Daphne observed. My mom always says that the wealthy don't just make money. They protect it strategically. They reached a heavy steel door at the corridor's end, its surface covered in a patina of age, but still imposing. The vault door hung slightly ajar, which immediately struck Fred as odd. If Mr. Pemberton said no one's been able to get past the ghost to investigate properly, Fred reasoned, then why is this vault door already open? Velma approached cautiously, examining the door's edges with her flashlight. Look here, fresh scratches around the lock mechanism. Someone with lockpicking tools has been here recently. And these footprints in the dust ... double quotes. She knelt down, measuring with her fingers. Women's shoes, size 7, with an unusual tread pattern. Modern shoes, not vintage. So our ghost wears contemporary footwear, Daphne said with a knowing smile. Interesting fashion choice for a 1920s phantom. They pushed the vault door fully open, its hinges groaning in protest. The beam of their flashlights revealed a room that took their breath away. The vault was larger than expected, about 20 feet square, and its walls were lined with steel deposit boxes. But what dominated the space was a large table in the center, covered with stacks of meticulously organized documents, old photographs, and several antique jewelry boxes. "Jackpot," Fred whispered, but not in the way someone greedy for treasure would say it, more like a detective who just found the crucial evidence. Velma immediately began photographing everything with her tablet, documenting the scene. "These aren't just random valuables. This is an entire archive of Madame Sinclair's financial empire." She carefully picked up one of the leather folders. Stock certificates from the 1920s through 1980s, bonds, property deeds. "And look at this." She held up a faded photograph of a young woman in a maid's uniform standing proudly in front of the hotel. "That must be Madame Sinclair when she first started working here," Daphne said softly, studying the image. "She looks so determined." Beneath the photograph was a handwritten note in elegant script. "Started with nothing. Saved everything. Built an empire one wise choice at a time. True wealth isn't what you earn. It's what you keep and grow." Velma's eyes lit up with understanding. This is a philosophy of wealth building based on patience and discipline. Madame Sinclair was teaching a lesson through her life story. But here is what is fascinating. She opened one of the jewelry boxes to reveal it was empty, except for a note. She converted everything to different forms of investment. She understood diversification decades before it became common wisdom. "So where's the actual fortune?" Fred asked, looking around the vault. "That's the million-dollar question, literally," Velma replied. She began examining the steel deposit boxes lining the walls, testing them one by one. Most were locked, but one clicked open easily. Inside was another note. "The greatest treasure isn't gold or jewels. It's knowledge of how to create wealth. But for those who understand, look where the wise save for rainy days." Daphne tilted her head thoughtfully. "Where the wise save for rainy days? That's an odd phrase. Is she talking about a savings account?" Before they could ponder further, a sound echoed through the basement. The distant but distinct noise of Shaggy screaming, followed by Scooby's panicked barking and the thundering of paws and feet running at full speed somewhere above them. "Sounds like the guys found something," Fred said, concern crossing his face. "Or something found them," Velma added, quickly photographing the last few documents. They hurried out of the vault, but just as Fred reached the stairs, a figure appeared atop the phantom investor, blocking their path. Her ethereal form flickered and pulsed with that strange green light, and in her translucent hands, she held what appeared to be an old leather bank deposit bag, overflowing with paper money. "You dare enter the vault of secrets?" Her voice boomed, echoing off the concrete walls. "The price of greed is bankruptcy of the soul." She raised the bag above her head, and suddenly, bills began flying out, not modern currency, but old-style notes from various decades, swirling around the basement corridor like a paper tornado. But Velma, ever the analytical mind, noticed something crucial. The bills weren't passing through the ghost's hands like they should if she were truly spectral. They were being thrown. "Fred, Daphne, follow me. Quick!" Velma shouted, ducking through the storm of currency and heading down a side corridor she'd noticed on the building plans. They ran through the basement's maze of storage rooms and utility spaces, the ghost laughter echoing behind them. Suddenly, Daphne spotted something: a service elevator, old but potentially functional. "In here," she called out, pulling the accordion-style metal gate open. They squeezed inside, and Fred frantically pressed the buttons. Miraculously, the old elevator lurched to life, its cables groaning as it slowly carried them upward. Through the gate, they could see the phantom investor watching them rise, her form flickering with what almost looked like frustration. "Did you notice?" Velma said, catching her breath. "That when she threw those bills, I could see a wire attached to the back of her costume? And the green glow was pulsing at exactly 60 hertz, the same frequency as a C electrical current. So, definitely not a ghost," Fred confirmed. Someone is going to a lot of trouble to make this haunting convincing, which means whatever fortune is hidden here must be substantial. But they're also trying to teach us something, Daphne added thoughtfully. All those notes about true wealth and wise saving. What if the real treasure isn't just money, but Madame Sinclair's entire system for building and protecting wealth? The elevator shuddered to a stop on the second floor, and they cautiously stepped out into a long hallway lined with guest room doors. At the far end, they could hear Shaggy and Scooby making commotion in what sounded like a kitchen. As they made their way toward the sound, Velma continued thinking aloud. Madame Sinclair's message keeps emphasizing understanding true value and where the wise save for rainy days. In her era, people literally saved money at home in hidden places because they didn't trust banks after the crash. What if she created a saving system right here in the hotel? A saving system worth haunting a hotel to protect, Fred mused. Someone knows where the real money is hidden, and they're reusing this ghost act to keep everyone away while they search for it. Or maybe they've already found it and don't want anyone else discovering what they're redoing. They reached the kitchen, pushing through the swinging doors to find Shaggy and Scooby backed against an industrial refrigerator, both trembling but oddly, both holding what looked like old coins and surrounded by open cabinet doors. Like, "You guys will never believe what we found," Shaggy exclaimed, relief flooding his face at seeing his friends. "This place is literally stuffed with money hidden in flour canisters, cookie jars, even inside the oven." Scooby nodded enthusiastically, dropping several silver dollars on the counter. "Rin Ra Rovan." Velma's eyes widened as understanding dawned. "Of course." Madame Sinclair turned the entire hotel into a giant savings account. She hid valuable coins and currency throughout the building, a diversified, distributed storage system. That's brilliant and incredibly risky if someone discovers the pattern, which someone has, Daphne said grimly, pointing to evidence on the kitchen counter. "Look, there's a modern metal detector here, and this notebook with a map of the hotel with certain rooms marked off." Fred picked up the notebook, studying the marked locations. Someone systematically searching the hotel for all of Madame Sinclair's hidden caches. They reusing the ghost disguise to keep legitimate people away while they collect a fortune in vintage currency and coins. A noise from the hallway made them all freeze footsteps, but this time not the clicking heels of the phantom investor. These were heavy work boots, moving cautiously but steadily toward the kitchen. "Gang," Fred whispered urgently. "I think it's time we set a trap. Whoever's behind this is close by, and they're getting bolder. We need to catch them in the act." "Zoinks," Shaggy whimpered. "I was afraid you'd say that." But before they could plan further, the kitchen lights suddenly blazed to life. Someone had restored power to this section of the hotel, and, standing in the doorway, backlit dramatically, was a man in a contractor's uniform, carrying a toolbox that looked suspiciously heavy for simple renovation work. Well, the man said with a smirk, "Looks like Mr. Pemberton's meddling kids have found the cookie jar. Or should I say, the coin jar?" He chuckled his own joke. "I'd say it's time for you to leave before the ghost gets angry, wouldn't you?" He set down his toolbox, and the gang could hear the distinct clink of metal inside, the sound of a fortune in old coins. The confrontation was about to begin, and the mystery of the millionaire's secret was about to get much more complicated. The contractor, whose embroidered name patch read Rick Sullivan, stood blocking the kitchen doorway with a confidence that suggested he was unafraid of 5 teenagers and a Great Dane. His smirk faded slightly when Fred took a calculated step forward, positioning himself between Sullivan and the rest of the gang. "We're not going anywhere," Fred said firmly. "We're here because Mr. Pemberton hired us to investigate why renovations keep getting sabotaged. Based on what we've found, I'd say you're not here to fix anything. You're here to steal Madame Sinclair's hidden fortune." Sullivan's laugh was harsh. "Steal? Kid, I'm not stealing anything. I'm salvaging." "There's a difference." This hotel's been abandoned for 40 years. Finders keepers, as they say in treasure hunting circles. That's not how property law works. Velma interjected, her voice sharp with disapproval. Everything in this hotel belongs to Mr. Pemberton as the current legal owner. What you're doing is theft. Plain and simple theft amplified by fraud, since you're posing as a legitimate contractor. Daphne noticed something crucial. Sullivan kept glancing nervously over his shoulder at the hallway, as if expecting someone or something. She filed that observation away. "Look," Sullivan said, his tone becoming more aggressive. "You kids don't understand how the real world works. I've been broke, lost everything in bad investments, bad business deals. When I heard about this place and the rumors of Madame Sinclair's hidden caches, I saw an opportunity. I deserve this money. I'll actually use it, not let it rot in walls and floorboards." "That's the exact opposite of Madame Sinclair's philosophy," Velma said passionately. She didn't get wealthy by taking shortcuts or justifying theft because she felt she deserved it. She saved, planned, invested wisely, and built her empire through patience and discipline. What you're redoing isn't salvaging. It's stealing from someone who understood that real wealth comes from earning and managing money responsibly, not from taking what isn't yours. Raving reaches. Scooby barked in agreement. "Like, yeah." Shaggy added, finding his courage. "And you're the one doing all the ghost stuff to scare people away, aren't you? The phantom investor?" Sullivan's expression darkened. "That ghostly dame was already haunting this place when I arrived. I just enhanced the legend. Made it more theatrical. Put on the costume when I needed to run people off. But there's something else going on here that you don't understand." Before he could finish, that familiar phantom voice echoed through the hotel, but this time from a different direction. The floor above them. "The vault of final secrets opens tonight. Come and face your financial ruin." Sullivan's face went pale. "That's not me." The gang exchanged glances. Two ghosts. "Jinkies," Velma whispered. "There's more than one person involved in this scheme." Suddenly, Sullivan's aggressive demeanor shifted to something closer to panic. "Listen, kids, you need to get out of here now. I thought I was the only one searching this place, but there's someone else, someone dangerous. I've heard them at night, moving through walls, searching the same places I'm searching. They're after something bigger than the coin collections." "What could be bigger than a fortune in vintage currency?" Fred demanded. From her position near the counter, Daphne had been quietly examining the notebook Sullivan had left in his toolbox. Her eyes widened as she flipped through the pages. "Guys, this isn't just a map of coin hiding spots. These are financial formulas, investment strategies, and, oh my God, these are stock certificates and bond numbers." Madame Sinclair didn't just hide coins. She created a system of investments that have been growing, untouched, for 40 years. Velma rushed over to look, her analytical mind racing through the implications. If these certificates were never cashed or claimed, and if the companies still exist, this could be worth millions in accumulated value and dividends. Madame Sinclair essentially created a time-locked investment portfolio, and that's what the second person is after, Fred concluded. Not the coins. The investment documents that could be redeemed for a massive fortune. Sullivan nodded grimly. "I was happy finding coins worth a few $100 each. But whoever else is here knows about the real treasure. And they're willing to do a lot more than dress up as a ghost to get it." A thunderous crash from the third floor shook the entire building, followed by the sound of wood splintering. Everyone looked up at the ceiling as dust rained down from the old plaster. "They're tearing the hotel apart," Daphne said with alarm. "If they're that desperate, they might bring the whole building down looking for those documents. We need to find the investment portfolio before they do." Fred decided, his leadership instincts taking over. "Velma, based on Madame Sinclair's clues about where the wise save for rainy days, where would she have hidden something that important?" Velma closed her eyes, thinking. All her clues have been about understanding true value and wisdom about saving. The wise don't just save money. They create safety nets. They prepare for emergencies. They double quotes, her eyes snapped open. The emergency fund. Every hotel has emergency cash on hand for crisis situations. It would be in the manager's office safe, but not the obvious safe, a hidden one. The manager's office would be on the second floor. Administrative wing, Daphne added, already pulling up the hotel map on her phone from photos they'd taken earlier. Then that's where we need to go, Fred said decisively. He turned to Sullivan. You're coming with us. If you want any chance of not being arrested for what you've already stolen, you all help us stop whoever is up there from destroying this historical building and possibly hurting people. Sullivan hesitated, but another crash from above, this one accompanied by the sound of a wall being demolished, made his decision for him. Fine, but if we're doing this, we need to move fast. Whoever's up there has power tools and no respect for structural integrity. The group moved quickly out of the kitchen and into the main hallway, but they barely made it 10 feet when a figure dropped down from a ceiling access panel directly in front of them. It was the Phantom Investor, but something was different this time. The costume was more elaborate, the green glow brighter, and the person wearing it moved with aggressive purpose rather than theatrical flourish. You will not interfere. The voice was distorted by an electronic voice modulator, but the threat was real. The figure reached into the folds of the ghostly costume and pulled out something decidedly unghost-like. A handheld electric saw, its blade glinting in the dim light. Zoinks! Shaggy screamed. Like, that ghost is armed. Run! Fred shouted, and the gang scattered in different directions. Shaggy and Scooby bolted down a side corridor, their natural talent for fear-based speed serving them well. They burst through a door marked ballroom and found themselves in a vast space with a soaring ceiling, crystal chandeliers, many missing crystals, and a stage at one end. The ballroom was eerily beautiful in its decay-peeling gold wallpaper, a once magnificent dance floor now warped and cracked, and floor-to-ceiling windows that showed the storm raging outside. Like Scoob, maybe we can hide in here until the scary ghost with the scary saw goes away, Shaggy suggested, his voice shaking. But as they crept further into the ballroom, they noticed something strange. The floor near the stage had been disturbed recently, boards pried up, dust patterns showing where someone had been digging. And there, partially hidden under the stage, was an old metal box with a faded label. Emergency Operations Fund. Rook Raggy. Scooby pointed with his paw. Good eye, buddy. Shaggy crept over and carefully pulled out the box. It was locked, but the lock looked old and potentially fragile. Using a piece of broken wood as a lever, he managed to pop it open. Inside wasn't money. It was a leather portfolio sealed with wax, and a letter on top addressed, "To whoever finds this and understands its true value." Like, this must be what everyone's looking for, Shaggy said excitedly. But his celebration was cut short by the sound of footsteps entering the ballroom. Heavy, purposeful footsteps. Shaggy and Scooby dove behind the stage curtain just as the Phantom Investor entered, the electric saw still in hand, methodically searching the room. From their hiding spot, they could see details they hadn't noticed before. Expensive hiking boots visible beneath the ghostly costume, and when the figure reached up to adjust something, they caught a glimpse of a very real, very modern smartwatch. Meanwhile, Fred, Velma, and Daphne had regrouped in the administrative wing with Sullivan, who was proving surprisingly helpful now that he realized how dangerous this situation had become. The manager's office is this way, Sullivan said, leading them to an ornate wooden door. I searched it before but didn't find any hidden safe. Maybe your smart friend here can spot what I missed. Velma entered the office with her flashlight and immediately began a systematic search. Hidden safes in this era were typically concealed behind paintings, inside walls, or under floorboards. But Madame Sinclair was too clever for obvious hiding spots. Daphne was examining the massive wooden desk when she noticed something odd about its construction. This desk is too deep. There is at least 6 inches of space that can't be accounted for in the drawer configuration. Velma joined her, and together they discovered a hidden release mechanism disguised as a decorative carving. A panel in the desk's back slid open, revealing a small but sophisticated safe built right into the furniture. "This is it," Velma breathed. This is where she would have kept her most important documents. But the safe required a combination 3 numbers. "We need to think like Madame Sinclair," Fred said urgently, listening for sounds of the saw-wielding phantom. What numbers would be significant to her? Her birthday? Daphne suggested. Too obvious for someone who preached about security, Velma countered. She pulled out her tablet, reviewing the photos she'd taken of Madame Sinclair's documents. Weighed in her ledger, she kept emphasizing 3 principles. Save first, invest wisely, protect always. And she numbered them 1, 2, 3. "Try 1 to 3, Fred said. "That's too simple," Sullivan protested. But Velma tried it anyway, and the safe clicked open. "Sometimes the simplest answer is the right one," Velma said with satisfaction. Madame Sinclair wanted someone with patience and careful observation to find this, not someone trying complicated schemes. Inside the safe was another leather portfolio, identical to the one Shaggy and Scooby had found, and a detailed map of the hotel with specific rooms marked, but different rooms than the ones in Sullivan's notebook. This is a decoy, Velma realized. She created multiple hiding spots to protect her real treasure. Whoever found one portfolio would think they'd found everything, but the complete set needs to be assembled from multiple locations. "Then we need to find Shaggy and Scooby," Fred said. If there are multiple portfolios, they might have found one too. The conversation was interrupted by a terrified scream, definitely Shaggy, coming from the direction of the ballroom. "Come on," Fred shouted, and they all ran toward the sound, prepared for whatever confrontation awaited them. The mystery was reaching its climax, and the true identity of the phantom investor and the real value of Madame Sinclair's millionaire secret was about to be revealed. But first, they had to save their friends and stop someone willing to destroy a historical building and threaten people with power tools for financial gain. The lessons about money, value, and the difference between wealth and greed were about to become very, very real. Fred burst through the ballroom doors with Velma, Daphne, and a surprisingly committed Rick Sullivan right behind him. The scene before them was chaos incarnate. Shaggy and Scooby were literally swinging from a chandelier. How they'd gotten up there remained a mystery for later, while the phantom investor stood below, wielding the electric saw and shouting distorted threats through the voice modulator. "Drop the saw and step away from my friends," Fred commanded with more authority than most teenagers could muster. The phantom investor spun around, and for a moment, there was a tense standoff. Then, surprisingly, the figure lowered the saw wand, let out a distorted laugh through the voice modulator. "You think you're so clever, don't you? Well, you're too late. I've already found what I need." The phantom reached into the costume and pulled out a leather portfolio identical to the one Shaggy was clutching on the chandelier. "Madame Sinclair's fortune is mine." "Actually," Velma said, adjusting her glasses with that expression she got when she was about to drop a knowledge bomb, "you only have one piece of the puzzle." Madame Sinclair was too smart to keep everything in one place. She created a distributed wealth system, multiple portfolios that need to be combined to access the full investment cash. The phantom's body language shifted from triumphant to uncertain. "You're bluffing, am I?" Velma held up her tablet, showing photographs of the documents they'd found. Each portfolio contains different investment certificates and bonds. Some are in stocks, some in municipal bonds, some in real estate trusts. They're all cross-referenced by a master key that only makes sense when you have all the pieces. It is basically an early form of multi-signature security, a financial concept that wouldn't become common for decades. She was a genius, Daphne added, her admiration for Madame Sinclair evident. She didn't just hide money. She created a treasure hunt that would only reward someone who understood patience, thoroughness, and the interconnected nature of a diversified portfolio. The phantom investor's stance became more aggressive, raising the saw again. Then I'll just take your portfolio too. Hand it over, all of you. Fred had been quietly observing the ballroom's layout while the others talked, his mind already formulating a plan. The room was perfect for one of his famous traps' multiple entry points, structural features that could be exploited, and plenty of decorative elements that could be repurposed. He caught Daphne's eye and gave her a subtle nod. Years of mystery solving together meant she understood immediately. You know what? Fred said, carefully modulating his tone to sound defeated. You're right. We should just give you what you want. But the thing is, we dropped our portfolio when we ran in here. It slid under that pile of old curtains near the stage. It was an obvious setup, but greed made people stupid. Fred was counting on that. The phantom investor hesitated, clearly suspicious, but the lure of getting all the portfolios was too strong. The figure began moving cautiously toward the indicated pile of curtains, saw still raised defensively. Velma, Fred whispered urgently. Remember that note about where the wise save for rainy days? I don't think it was just about the physical locations. What if it was also about the timing? When would a wise person access their emergency savings? Velma's eyes widened with understanding. During an actual emergency like right now. Fred, you're brilliant. The final portfolio isn't hidden in a specific location. It is meant to be discovered through the process of solving the mystery itself. Meanwhile, Shaggy and Scooby were still clinging to the chandelier, which was making ominous creaking sounds under their combined weight. Like guys, Shaggy called down nervously. This chandelier is making sounds that suggest it doesn't appreciate our presence. Rary rad rounds. Scooby agreed, his paws wrapped so tightly around the chandelier's central chain that his knuckles, if dogs had knuckles, would have been white. Hold on just a little longer, Daphne called up. She'd been quietly positioning herself near the ballroom's main lighting panel, an old-fashioned circuit breaker system that still appeared functional. Fred, when you give the signal. The phantom investor reached the pile of curtains and began poking through them with the saw, clearly not wanting to put the weapon down or turn away from the gang. That's when Fred noticed something crucial. Sullivan had quietly circled around behind the figure, using the shadows and his knowledge of the building's layout to get into position. Fred gave the signal a sharp whistle. 3 things happened simultaneously. First, Daphne threw the main breaker, plunging the ballroom into darkness, except for the lightning flashing through the windows. Second, Sullivan, showing surprising courage for someone who'd been stealing from the hotel, tackled the phantom investor from behind, causing the saw to fly from their hands and skitter across the floor. Third, the chandelier finally gave up its battle with gravity. Shaggy and Scooby dropped straight down, landing, miraculously, on top of the struggling phantom investor and Sullivan, creating a pile of tangled limbs, ghostly costume fabric, and panicked yelping. Zoink, sorry. Like, we didn't mean to land on you. Shaggy apologized, even though it had actually worked perfectly. Fred rushed forward with a length of old curtain rope he'd prepared, and within seconds, he had the phantom investor tied up securely. Velma retrieved her flashlight and turned it on the captive figure. Now, Fred said grimly, let's see who's really behind this. He reached down and pulled off the phantom investor's mask and removed the voice modulator. The face revealed was a woman in her mid-40s, with sharp features and an expression of frustrated fury. Jinkies! Velma exclaimed. It's Mrs. Constance Pemberton, Daphne finished, recognition dawning. Mr. Pemberton's wife. The woman glared at them, no longer bothering to hide her identity. So what if it is? That fool husband of mine was going to renovate this hotel without ever searching it properly. Do you know how much money is hidden in these walls? Millions, and he wanted to just tear everything down and rebuild. Sullivan, extracting himself from the pile and rubbing his shoulder where he'd hit the floor, looked shocked. "Wait, you're the owner's wife. Then you're the one who hired me. You're the private investor who contacted me about salvaging architectural elements from the hotel." "Of course I hired you, you idiot," Constance snapped. "I needed someone to do the initial searching while I played the concerned wife. When you started finding the coin caches, I realized there was much more here than I'd thought. That's when I created the ghost disguise, both to scare you away before you found too much and to keep my husband from bringing in actual contractors." Velma was piecing it together aloud. "You learned about Madame Sinclair's hidden fortune through estate documents when your husband inherited this property. But he was more interested in historic preservation than treasure hunting. So you created an elaborate haunting to give yourself time to search without interference. And you were willing to threaten people with power tools and potentially destroy a historic building to do it," Fred added with disgust. "Historic building?" Constance laughed bitterly. "This is a decaying money pit. The real value is in what's hidden inside it, value that should belong to me as the owner's wife. I've been living off my husband's modest income while this fortune was sitting here waiting to be claimed." Daphne shook her head sadly. "You don't understand Madame Sinclair's lesson at all. She didn't build wealth through greed or shortcuts. She saved, invested wisely, and built something lasting. You're trying to steal it with lies and threats. That's the opposite of her philosophy. Philosophy doesn't pay bills." Constance shot back. "No, but honest work and smart financial planning do," Velma countered. "Madame Sinclair started as a maid and became a millionaire. You started with a valuable property and nearly destroyed it through greed." Shaggy, finally standing up and dusting himself off, noticed something during the commotion. The leather portfolio he'd been carrying had fallen open, and several documents had spilled out. The one piece of paper looked different from the others newer, and written in different handwriting. Like, "Guys, I think there's something else here." Velma took the document and read it aloud by flashlight. "If you're reading this, you've assembled the portfolios through patience and cleverness virtues I valued above all else. But the true treasure isn't in these certificates. I cashed them all in 1984, converted everything to gold and silver bullion, and donated it to establish a trust fund. The trust provides scholarships for hospitality workers who want to start their own businesses, teaching them the financial literacy I learned through hard experience. The real fortune I'm leaving behind isn't money. It's the knowledge of how to build and protect wealth responsibly. Congratulations on learning that lesson." Signed, Evangeline Sinclair. A stunned silence filled the ballroom. "Wait," Sullivan said slowly. "You mean all this, the ghost, the searching, the danger was for nothing? The money's gone?" "Not gone," Velma corrected, a smile spreading across her face. "Invested in something that creates lasting value, education, and opportunity for others." She turned her personal fortune into generational wealth for hundreds of people. Constance looked like she'd been slapped. No. No. That can't be right. There has to be more. The coins, the currency, are worth something, Fred acknowledged, but they're not the millions you thought. They're collectibles scattered throughout the hotel, probably worth a few $100,000 total if carefully sold to collectors. Madame Sinclair left them as a kind of game valuable enough to be worth finding, but not the real treasure. She was teaching a lesson, Daphne said with admiration. The journey of searching, learning to value patience and wisdom over greed. That was the point. The real wealth is knowledge, and that knowledge is actually priceless, Velma added. According to this trust document, anyone who solves the mystery of the portfolios can apply for a special grant from the Sinclair Foundation to start their own business, if they can demonstrate they've learned the principles of financial responsibility she valued. Shaggy's eyes lit up. Like, does that mean Scooby and I could get money to start our dream sandwich shop? The Scooby Snack Shack? Ranwich Rob, Scooby barked excitedly. If you create a proper business plan showing you understand budgeting, saving, investing profits wisely, and building value over time, Velma said with a grin, then yes, potentially. Like, man, I'm gonna learn so much about compound interest and fiscal responsibility. Shaggy declared with uncharacteristic enthusiasm for anything academic. Fred looked down at Constance, who had deflated completely, the fight gone out of her. You could have had access to something much more valuable than hidden coins, a foundation that helps people build real wealth. Instead, you chose lies, theft, and threats. Mr. Pemberton is going to be heartbroken, Daphne said softly. But he deserves to know the truth. And the police deserve to know about attempted theft, fraud, and assault with a dangerous weapon. Fred added, pulling out his phone. Mrs. Pemberton, you have the right to remain silent, but I don't think that's been your strong suit tonight. As Fred called the authorities and Velma documented everything for evidence, Sullivan approached the group sheepishly. Look, I know I don't deserve any consideration here, but I really was broke. Lost everything to bad investments and worse financial decisions. I was desperate when Mrs. Pemberton contacted me. I'm not making excuses, just explaining. Velma looked at him thoughtfully. The Sinclair Foundation also offers financial literacy courses for people recovering from economic hardship. You could take those courses, learn the principles Madame Sinclair used, and actually rebuild your life the right way through knowledge and discipline, not theft. Sullivan nodded slowly. I'd like that. I'd really like to learn how to not end up broke and desperate again. That's the first wise financial decision you've made in a while, Fred said, not entirely unkindly. Outside, sirens were approaching through the storm. The mystery of the haunted hotel was solved, the phantom investor unmasked, and Madame Sinclair's final lesson learned. As they waited for the police, Scooby found one more coin hidden in a crack in the floorboard, a gold $20 piece from 1927. He showed it to Shaggy proudly. Like Scoob, should we keep it or turn it in as part of the estate? Scooby thought for a moment, then walked over to Fred and dropped it in his hand. Rewrite ring. Good boy, Scooby, Fred said, scratching behind his ears. That's what Madame Sinclair would have wanted, doing the right thing even when no one's watching. That's real integrity, and it's worth more than gold. Worth more ran rolled. Scooby agreed, tail wagging. The trap had worked perfectly, but the real success was what they'd all learned about the true value of money, the importance of financial wisdom, and the difference between being greedy and being genuinely wealthy. As Constance Pemberton was led away by police, she looked back at the hotel one last time, perhaps finally understanding what she'd really lost, not money, but the opportunity to be part of something meaningful. The greatest treasure had been within reach all along, if only she'd had the wisdom to see it. The police had taken Constance Pemberton into custody, but the night's revelations were far from over. Detective Morrison, a seasoned investigator who'd worked with Mystery Inc. on previous cases, stood in the hotel lobby, taking statements while the gang gathered around the reception desk, exhausted but triumphant. Let me make sure I have this straight, Detective Morrison said, flipping through his notebook. The owner's wife created an elaborate haunting scheme, hired a desperate contractor to search for hidden money, then took over the ghost act herself when she realized there might be millions involved? That's exactly right, Velma confirmed, pulling up her documentation on her tablet. She knew about Madame Sinclair's hidden fortune from estate records, but didn't realize that the real wealth had already been converted into an educational trust. The coins and currency scattered throughout the hotel were just the tip of the iceberg, or what she thought was the tip. Mr. Pemberton had arrived shortly after the police, and he looked devastated as he sat on one of the dusty lobby chairs, his head in his hands. He was a gentle-looking man in his 60s, wearing a cardigan and glasses, exactly the type who would care more about historic preservation than hidden treasure. "I don't understand," he said quietly. Constance always seemed happy. "Yes, we had to budget carefully with the hotel expenses, but we were never in financial trouble. Why would she do this?" Daphne sat beside him compassionately. "Sometimes people confuse wanting to be wealthy with actually building wealth. Your wife saw the potential for a quick fortune and lost sight of everything else, including what she already had, and what she could have had legally," Fred added. "As the property owner, Mr. Pemberton, you actually have legitimate access to the Sinclair Foundation. Madame Sinclair's will specified that future owners of the hotel who completed the portfolio puzzle would be granted special trustee status, allowing them to nominate scholarship recipients and even receive funding for proper historical renovation." Mr. Pemberton looked up, surprised. "Really?" Velma nodded enthusiastically. Madame Sinclair wanted her hotel preserved and wanted to ensure that the people who owned it understood the value of both financial wisdom and cultural heritage. You could renovate this place properly, turning it into a boutique hotel and museum with foundation support, creating jobs and preserving history simultaneously. That's exactly what I wanted to do," Mr. Pemberton said, a glimmer of hope appearing in his eyes despite his personal heartbreak. "I've always loved this building and its history. I just never had the capital to do the renovations properly. Now you do," Fred said with a smile. "If you're willing to learn and apply Madame Sinclair's principles of financial management." Detective Morrison had been coordinating with his officers, who had been searching the hotel and had found Mrs. Pemberton's stash of stolen coins and currency hidden in her car. "We've recovered approximately $47,000 worth of collectible currency and coins. That's just what she'd found so far. There's probably more hidden throughout the building, all of which legally belongs to Mr. Pemberton's estate," Velma noted. "If carefully sold to collectors and the proceeds invested wisely, that could be a significant start to a renovation fund even before the foundation support." Sullivan, who'd been sitting quietly in the corner under police supervision, spoke up. "Mr. Pemberton, I know I don't deserve to ask for anything, but I am actually a legitimate contractor. I did terrible things here because I was desperate and made bad choices. But if you're looking for someone who now understands the importance of doing things the right way, someone who's seen firsthand what greed and shortcuts lead to ... double quotes," he trailed off hopefully. Mr. Pemberton studied him for a long moment. "That depends entirely on whether you're serious about taking those financial literacy courses and proving you've learned from this. I believe in second chances, but they have to be earned." "I'll earn it," Sullivan said firmly. "I promise." Shaggy, who'd been sitting on the floor sharing a box of Scooby snacks with his canine companion, suddenly jumped up with excitement. "Like, I just realized something. Velma, if Madame Sinclair started with nothing and became a millionaire just by being smart with money, that means anyone can do it, right?" "Not anyone can become a millionaire," Velma clarified, "but anyone can significantly improve their financial situation by following sound principles. Spend less than you earn, save, consistently invest wisely, avoid debt when possible, and continuously educate yourself about money management." Madame Sinclair proved that financial success isn't about luck or having connections. It is about discipline and knowledge. "And patience," Daphne added. She worked as a maid for 15 years, saving every penny before she even made her first investment. "That's dedication, patience," Scooby agreed thoughtfully, then added hopefully, "Ran ruby racks?" Everyone laughed, the tension of the night finally breaking. Detective Morrison closed his notebook. "Well, Mystery Inc., you've done it again. Solved a mystery, caught a criminal, and somehow turned it into an economics lesson. I'll need written statements from all of you, but that can wait until tomorrow. You kids should get some rest." "Actually," Fred said, "we should probably do one more sweep of the hotel. If there are more hidden caches, we should document their locations for Mr. Pemberton. Plus, Madame Sinclair mentioned multiple portfolios. We've only found 2. There might be more. As if on cue, a section of wall paneling near the grand staircase made a soft clicking sound and swung open slightly. Everyone jumped, half expecting another phantom investor to emerge, but instead, they saw a small hidden compartment containing a third leather portfolio and a sealed envelope. "Jinkies!" Velma exclaimed, rushing over. It's like the hotel itself is revealing its secrets now that the mystery is solved properly. She carefully removed the portfolio and envelope, bringing them to the reception desk where everyone could see. The envelope was addressed to those who solved my puzzle with wisdom rather than greed. "Mr. Pemberton," Fred said, "this is addressed to whoever solved the mystery. That's technically all of us, but you're the legal owner. You should open it." Mr. Pemberton took the envelope with trembling hands and broke the wax seal. Inside was a letter written in elegant handwriting. "Dear clever investigator, if you're reading this, you've found at least 3 of my 5 portfolios, and you've done so by working together, using intelligence rather than force, and hopefully learning something about the true nature of wealth along the way. I designed this treasure hunt not to hide money, but to teach lessons. Real wealth isn't about having the most money. It's about understanding how money works, respecting it, and using it to create value for yourself and others. I started with nothing. I cleaned rooms in this very hotel for wages that would horrify modern workers. But I had something more valuable than money. I had curiosity, discipline, and patience. I learned by observing the wealthy guests, not their spending habits, but their wealth-building strategies. I read every financial newspaper left in rooms. I asked questions of the bankers and investors who stayed here. By the time I made my first investment, I had spent 15 years learning. And when I finally bought this hotel, I had spent 30 years mastering financial principles that most people never learn at all. The portfolios scattered throughout this hotel were once worth millions, but money sitting idle helps no one. So I converted everything to establish a foundation that teaches others what I learned. The scholarships, the business grants, the financial literacy programs, these are my real fortune, and they'll keep growing and helping people long after anyone remembers my name. If you solve this puzzle through teamwork, intelligence, and persistence, you've already demonstrated the qualities that lead to success in any endeavor. The foundation is yours to use, not to take from, but to access for legitimate educational and entrepreneurial purposes. And here's my final secret, the one I've saved for those wise enough to read this far. The hotel itself is the 5th portfolio. When I designed this building, I built in features that could generate income rooftop space, perfect for solar panels, a new technology in your time, but valuable hidden rooms that can be converted to premium suites, a basement structure ideal for modern amenities. The building is an asset that can generate wealth if renovated with intelligence and care. Use what I've left behind to create something wonderful. Teach others what you've learned. Build value that lasts. And please, for heaven's sake, take care of my hotel. I love this place. Respectfully, Evangeline Sinclair, P.S. Tell the dog and his friend that there's a final cache of coins hidden in the old kitchen meat locker. They earned it through their bravery. Use it wisely, perhaps, to start that business you've been dreaming about. Everyone stared at the letter in amazement. She knew, Daphne whispered. She somehow predicted that the people who solved her puzzle would include someone food-motivated who daydream of starting a sandwich shop. Like, she's talking about us. Shaggy exclaimed, grabbing Scooby in a hug. Scoob, we're gonna have our Scooby snack shack after all. But we gotta do it right, business plan, budget, the whole thing. Rusiness ran, Scooby barked excitedly. Velma was already making calculations on her tablet. If the coins in that cache are similar value to what Mrs. Pemberton found, and if you invest some of the proceeds while using the rest as startup capital, and if you apply for one of the Sinclair Foundation's small business grants, She looked up with a genuine smile. You two could actually make this work. Mr. Pemberton was crying quietly, but they were tears of hope rather than sadness. She wanted the hotel to live on, to be something valuable. And she created a way to make that happen even decades after her death. That's remarkable. Fred put a hand on his shoulder. And now you can make it happen. You've got the resources, the foundation support, and a contractor who's highly motivated to do quality work to redeem himself. Sullivan nodded vigorously. I won't let you down, sir. I swear it. Detective Morrison shook his head in amazement. In 20 years of police work, I've never seen a case quite like this. A victim who isn't really a victim, stolen treasure that was meant to be found, and a criminal whose greed actually led to something positive happening. That's the power of good planning, Velma said. Madame Sinclair created a system so robust that even people with bad intentions couldn't completely derail it. That's genius-level risk management. The gang spent the next hour helping Mr. Pemberton document the locations of the portfolios and beginning to catalog the hotel's hidden features that Madame Sinclair had mentioned. As they worked, the storm outside finally broke, and dawnlight began filtering through the grand windows of the lobby. You know what I just realized? Daphne said, looking around at the beautiful, damaged hotel. This whole place is like a metaphor for financial management. It looks abandoned and worthless on the surface, but underneath, there's incredible value. You just have to know how to find it, preserve it, and build on it. And you need patience, Fred added. Quick schemes to get rich, like what Mrs. Pemberton tried, always fail. But slow, steady building, like what Mr. Pemberton is going to do with proper renovation, that creates lasting value. Ramwiches, Scooby added, making everyone laugh. Yes, Scooby, Velma agreed, and sandwiches. Built one quality ingredient at a time, with a proper business plan and financial discipline. As the sun rose fully, painting the lobby in golden light, the true scope of Madame Sinclair's vision became clear. She hadn't just hidden money. She'd created an entire educational experience disguised as a treasure hunt, designed to teach the very lessons that had made her wealthy in the first place. Dang, Fred said, looking at his friends with pride. We didn't just solve a mystery tonight. We uncovered something much more valuable, a masterclass in financial wisdom from someone who truly understood what wealth means. And caught a bad guy, Shaggy added. Like, don't forget that part. Oh, I definitely haven't forgotten, Detective Morrison said dryly, finishing up his reports. Mrs. Pemberton will be facing charges for theft, fraud, conspiracy, and assault. But I have a feeling that the Sinclair Foundation might offer financial literacy courses to prisoners, and she might just become their most motivated student. Everyone deserves a chance to learn and change, Daphne said generously. That is really what Madame Sinclair's whole system was about, giving people divine value, knowledge and opportunity to build better lives. The mystery was solved, the phantom investor unmasked, and the millionaire's secret of the haunted hotel finally revealed. But for Mystery Inc., the real treasure wasn't the money. It was the lesson about how true wealth is built. With patience, discipline, knowledge, and a commitment to creating value that lasts. And maybe, just maybe, with really good sandwiches made by two entrepreneurs who learned that the best investments are the ones you make in yourself and your dreams. 3 months later, the Mystery Machine pulled up to the Grandview Grand Hotel once again, but this time, the scene was dramatically different. The overgrown entrance had been cleared and landscaped. Scaffolding surrounded parts of the building where careful restoration work was in progress. The broken windows had been replaced with historically accurate replicas. And most impressively, a beautiful new sign hung above the entrance. The Grandview Grand Hotel, a Sinclair Foundation heritage property, reopening spring 2026. Wow, Daphne breathed as they climbed out of the van. Mr. Pemberton has made incredible progress, and he did it the right way, Velma added, checking her tablet where she'd been following the project's development. He applied for historic preservation grants, got low-interest loans from the Sinclair Foundation's business development program, hired local workers, and even started offering apprenticeships in historic restoration techniques. He's not just rebuilding a hotel, he's creating sustainable economic value for the whole community. As they approached the entrance, they could see that the lobby had been transformed. The dust and decay were gone, replaced by carefully restored elegance. The marble floors gleamed. The chandelier, a new one, safely installed, sparkled, and period-appropriate furniture filled the space. But what was most striking was the new addition. An entire wing of the lobby had been converted into the Evangeline Sinclair Financial Literacy Center with classrooms, computer stations, and a small museum documenting Madame Sinclair's journey from maid to millionaire. Mr. Pemberton emerged from an office, looking 10 years younger than he had that stormy night 3 months ago. His eyes were bright with purpose, and he moved with the confidence of someone who'd found their calling. "Mystery, Inc." He greeted them warmly. "Perfect timing. We're having a special event today, and you're the guests of honor." "Event?" Fred asked curiously. "Follow me," Mr. Pemberton said with a mysterious smile. He led them through the lobby to what had once been the hotel's grand ballroom, the same room where Shaggy and Scooby had dangled from a chandelier while being threatened by a phantom investor with a saw. Now, it had been beautifully restored, and it was filled with people, local families, business students from nearby universities, and several dignified-looking individuals who had the bearing of Foundation Board members. At the front of the room, a ribbon stretched across a doorway, and beside it stood Shaggy and Scooby, both wearing surprisingly professional-looking chef-ass aprons emblazoned with a logo. The Scooby Snack Shack, where every sandwich is a mystery of flavor. "Like, you guys made it," Shaggy exclaimed, waving excitedly. "Ryu Raid Rit." Scooby barked happily. "Wait," Daphne said, delighted understanding dawning. "Is this the grand opening of the hotel's first tenant business?" Mr. Pemberton confirmed proudly. Shaggy and Scooby spent the last 3 months taking every financial literacy course the Sinclair Foundation offers, writing a comprehensive business plan, and training in professional food service. They passed every requirement with flying colors. Well, mostly flying colors, Velma corrected with a grin. Shaggy did eat his way through the food cost analysis module. But their business plan was actually brilliant. They identified an underserved market for high-quality, affordable sandwiches in this area, created a realistic growth projection, and planned for sustainable sourcing of ingredients. And, Shaggy added proudly, like, we set up a proper savings account and everything. 20% of all profits go straight to savings before we pay ourselves. Just like Madame Sinclair taught. 20%. Scooby confirmed. Mr. Pemberton addressed the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, 3 months ago, this hotel was a crumbling ruin, and I was dealing with a personal crisis that made me question everything. But thanks to these 5 remarkable young people, we discovered not just hidden treasure, but hidden wisdom. The wisdom of Evangeline Sinclair, who understood that true wealth isn't about having money. It's about knowing how to create value, manage resources, and build something that lasts." He gestured to the gang. "Mystery Inc. taught me that sometimes the most valuable things aren't hidden in walls. They're hidden in principles and knowledge that anyone can access if they're willing to learn." Today, we celebrate not just the opening of a sandwich shop, but the opening of the Sinclair Financial Literacy Center, where we'll teach the lessons that Madame Sinclair lived by. A woman in a business suit stepped forward. She wore a name tag identifying her as Dr. Patricia Chun, director of the Sinclair Foundation. The foundation is proud to announce that the Grandview Grand Hotel Restoration Project will serve as a model for similar projects around the country. Mr. Pemberton's approach, combining historic preservation with community economic development and financial education, is Exactly what Madame Sinclair envisioned when she created the foundation. She turned to the gang. And we have a special announcement from Mystery Inc. The Foundation's board has voted to create the Mystery Inc. Scholarship for young investigators, offering full financial literacy education and seed funding for business ventures to young people who demonstrate exceptional problem-solving skills, teamwork, and ethical thinking. Because you've shown that the next generation understands what really matters. Fred looked stunned. That's incredibly generous. Thank Madame Sinclair, Dr. Chun replied. She set up the foundation to recognize and reward exactly the qualities you've demonstrated. Rick Sullivan appeared from the back of the crowd, wearing clean work clothes and looking healthier than he had that night. He approached somewhat sheepishly. I wanted to say thank you, he told the gang. I completed all the Foundation's financial recovery programs, and Mr. Pemberton gave me a second chance. I'm now the head contractor for the hotel restoration, and I'm teaching apprentices how to do quality work. I'm earning an honest living, rebuilding my savings the right way, and double quotes. He paused. Emotional. I'm proud of what I'm doing for the first time in years. That's what Madame Sinclair wanted, Velma said warmly. Not to punish people for mistakes, but to give them the knowledge and opportunity to do better. Daphne noticed someone else in the crowd, a familiar face that shocked her. Is that Mrs. Pemberton? Indeed, Constance Pemberton sat in one of the back rows, looking very different from the aggressive woman they'd caught that night. She was dressed simply, without the designer label she'd worn before, and her expression was thoughtful rather than bitter. Mr. Pemberton noticed their surprise. Constance is participating in the Foundation's financial literacy programs. It was part of her sentence, actually. Court-mandated education. But something changed for her. She's not just completing requirements anymore. She's actually learning. As if sensing she was being discussed, Constance approached, looking uncomfortable but determined. I wanted to apologize, she said quietly to the gang. What I did was wrong. I was so focused on wanting to be wealthy that I never stopped to think about what actual wealth means. These past 3 months, learning Madame Sinclair's story in detail, understanding the patience and discipline it took for her to succeed, She shook her head. I was greedy and foolish. I nearly destroyed something valuable because I couldn't see value unless it was in my bank account. The fact that you understand that now shows growth, Fred said carefully. What matters is what you do going forward. I'm still working on that, Constance admitted. I may be working on it for the rest of my life, but at least now I have the right tools to build something real instead of chasing quick riches. That's all anyone can do, Velma said. Learn, grow, and make better choices going forward. Mr. Pemberton cleared his throat, drawing everyone's attention back to the front of the room. Now, without further delay, I think it's time for Mystery Inc. to do the honors. Fred, would you and your team please cut the ribbon and officially open the Scooby Snack Shack? Fred, Velma, Daphne, Shaggy, and Scooby gathered at the ribbon, with Shaggy and Scooby positioned at the center. Mr. Pemberton handed Fred a large pair of ceremonial scissors. This is your moment, guys, Fred said, passing the scissors to Shaggy. You earned this. Shaggy's hand trembled slightly as he took the scissors, not from fear this time, but from emotion. Like 3 months ago, I was just a guy who spent his last $20 on a sandwich without thinking about it. Now, I'm about to open a business based on making sandwiches. Life is weird, man. Rifrey's weird. Scooby agreed, placing his paw over Shaggy's hand on the scissors. But we learned something totally important, Shaggy continued, looking at the crowd. Madame Sinclair taught us that it's not about how much money you have right now. It's about what you do with whatever you have. She started with practically nothing and built an empire. We started with a love of food and a dream. And now we've got a real business with a real plan and real responsibility. Ran real ranwiches. Scooby added, making the crowd laugh. Together, they cut the ribbon, and the crowd erupted in applause. The doors to the Scooby Snack Shack swung open, revealing a charming, efficient sandwich shop with a vintage aesthetic that perfectly matched the hotel's restored elegance. The menu board displayed creative sandwich names like the Mystery Meat Ball, the Velma Veggie Delight, the Daphne's Dangerously Good Turkey Club, the Fred Trap, It's a Wrap, and of course, the Scooby Snack Special. But what caught Velma's eye was a small plaque mounted near the register. This business was built on the principles of Evangeline Sinclair. Save first, invest wisely, protect always. 20% of our profits support financial literacy programs for young entrepreneurs. You're giving back already, Velma said, genuinely impressed. That's advanced thinking. Like, Madame Sinclair gave us the knowledge to start this, Shaggy explained. It's only right that we help other people get the same chance. Besides, our business teacher said that businesses with a mission beyond just making money tend to be more successful long-term anyway. That's absolutely true, Dr. Chun confirmed. Companies with strong social responsibility components typically show better customer loyalty, employee satisfaction, and ultimately, profitability. It's good ethics and good business. As the crowd dispersed to sample sandwiches and toured the Financial Literacy Center, Velma pulled Shaggy aside with her tablet. I've been tracking your business metrics, she said, showing him graphs and projections. If you maintain your current food cost ratio, customer acquisition rate, and savings discipline, within 5 years, you could expand to 3 locations. Within 10 years, you could franchise the concept. Shaggy's eyes widened. Like, franchise? You mean other people could open Scooby Snack Shacks? If you scale intelligently and maintain quality control, Velma confirmed. But here's the key. You'd need to avoid the trap of growing too fast. Rapid expansion without proper capital reserves is what kills most small businesses. Madame Sinclair would tell you to grow slowly, reinvest profits wisely, and never take on debt you can't comfortably service. Dude, Shaggy said seriously, 3 months ago, I didn't know what capital reserves or service debt meant. Now I'm actually understanding this stuff. Education is wild. Education is power, Velma corrected with a smile. Financial literacy gives you choices and freedom that you wouldn't have otherwise. Meanwhile, Fred and Daphne were touring the Financial Literacy Center with Mr. Pemberton. The space was impressive computer stations for online learning, a small library of financial books, interactive displays showing concepts like compound interest and investment diversification, and even a mock stock market trading floor where students could practice investing with simulated money. This is incredible, Daphne said, examining an exhibit about Madame Sinclair's life. You've turned her story into a comprehensive educational experience. That was always her intention, Mr. Pemberton explained. When the Foundation's lawyers finally worked through all her estate documents, we discovered that she'd left incredibly detailed instructions. She wanted future generations to see that financial success isn't about luck or privilege, it's about knowledge, discipline, and making smart choices over time. Fred was studying a display about the dangers of get-rich-quick schemes. This is perfect for young people. So many of my friends from school fall for scams or make impulsive financial decisions because they've never been taught the basics. Exactly, Mr. Pemberton agreed. Financial literacy should be taught in every school, but it isn't. So the Sinclair Foundation is filling that gap. We offer free courses to anyone who wants to learn. Students, adults, people recovering from financial hardship like Mr. Sullivan, even former criminals trying to rebuild their lives like my wife. He paused, his expression becoming thoughtful. You know, that night when you exposed Constance, I thought my life was over. My marriage was ruined, my financial situation was uncertain, and I felt like a failure. But Madame Sinclair's wisdom saved me. By following her principles, making a plan, seeking proper funding, building slowly but surely, I've created something I'm proud of. And maybe, eventually, Constance and I can rebuild our relationship on a foundation of shared values and honest communication. That's growth, Daphne said softly. Both personal and financial. A young woman approached. She couldn't have been more than 19, carrying a notebook and looking nervous. "Excuse me, Mr. Pemberton? I'm here for my appointment about the scholarship program." "Ah, yes, Maria, right?" Mr. Pemberton's face lit up. "You want to start a graphic design business?" "Yes, sir," Maria said shyly. "I've been designing logos and websites for friends, but I don't know how to turn it into a real business. I don't know anything about taxes or business licenses or saving for retirement or any of that stuff." "Well, you've come to the right place," Mr. Pemberton assured her. "The Sinclair Foundation will provide you with comprehensive business training, and if your business plan is solid, we'll provide seed funding. By this time next year, you could have a thriving design company." Fred watched this interaction with a sense of deep satisfaction. This helping people build real skills and real businesses was what Madame Sinclair had envisioned. Not just giving away money, but giving people the tools to create their own wealth. As the afternoon wore on, the gang regrouped in the hotel's restored restaurant, sampling sandwiches from the Scooby Snack Shack, which were, everyone agreed, legitimately delicious and reflecting on the case. "You know what I find most fascinating about this whole mystery?" Velma said, taking a bite of her veggie sandwich. Madame Sinclair essentially gamified financial education. She turned learning about money into a treasure hunt, making it engaging and memorable instead of boring and abstract. "And it worked," Daphne added. "Look at Shaggy and Scooby. They went from impulsive spenders to knowledgeable business owners in 3 months, because they were motivated by the puzzle and the prize. Like, I never thought I'd voluntarily take an accounting class," Shaggy admitted. "But when it was part of solving the mystery and getting to start our dream business, suddenly it was interesting. I actually understand profit margins now. That's crazy." "Profit margins!" Scooby barked proudly, then added in a more serious tone, "Randrax regulations." Everyone laughed, but Fred raised his glass of soda in a toast. To Evangeline Sinclair, a woman who understood that the greatest wealth you can leave behind isn't money, but knowledge. And to the principle that real treasure isn't what you find, but what you learn along the way. To Madame Sinclair. Everyone echoed, clinking glasses. Velma pulled out one final document she'd been saving. "Speaking of learning, I solved the last piece of Madame Sinclair's puzzle. Remember how she said there were 5 portfolios? We found 3 that night, but the 4th and 5th were harder to locate." "Where were they?" Fred asked curiously. "The 4th was hidden in the hotel's old accounting office, inside a false bottom in a filing cabinet. It contained her original business ledgers, showing every transaction she made from 1920 to 1985. It's an incredible historical document about economic life in that era." "And the 5th? Daphne prompted. Velma smiled. The 5th portfolio wasn't a physical object at all. It was a password-protected file in the Foundation's archives. The password was the date Madame Sinclair bought her first stock, March 15th, 1929. The file contains video recordings she made in the 1980s oral history interviews where she explains her philosophy, her strategies, and her hopes for the future. Mr. Pemberton is having them digitized, and they'll become the cornerstone of the educational program. "So we can actually hear her voice?" Daphne said, delighted. "That's amazing." "I watched some of the footage," Velma continued. "She was incredibly articulate and charismatic. In one segment, she talks directly to future entrepreneurs, and she says something I think we should all remember." Velma consulted her notes. "The secret to wealth isn't earning more, though, that helps. It's spending less than you earn, saving the difference, and investing those savings to work for you. Time and compound interest are the most powerful forces in finance." A little money saved consistently over many years will always beat large amounts spent impulsively. Be patient. Be disciplined. Be smart. And most importantly, use your wealth to create opportunities for others. Because money that only serves yourself is poverty dressed in expensive clothes. The table fell silent as everyone absorbed these words. Poverty dressed in expensive clothes, Fred repeated thoughtfully. That's exactly what Mrs. Pemberton had, wasn't it? She was so focused on having wealth that she didn't realize she was poor in the things that actually matter: integrity, purpose, community. But she's learning, Daphne reminded him. That's the beautiful thing about Madame Sinclair's system. It's never too late to learn and change. Mr. Pemberton approached their table, accompanied by a journalist from the local newspaper who'd been covering the hotel's restoration. Mr. Ink, would you mind if we got a photo of you with Shaggy and Scooby in front of their new shop? The paper wants to run a feature story about how the hotel mystery led to economic revitalization for the whole neighborhood. Economic revitalization, Shaggy repeated, grinning. Like, listen to me using fancy words. Scoob, we're sophisticated business people now. Sophisticated. Scooby agreed, straightening his apron. As they posed for photos, the journalist asked questions about the case, and Velma found herself explaining not just the mystery of the phantom investor, but the deeper mystery of how financial literacy can transform lives and communities. The real story here isn't about a ghost or hidden money, Velma concluded. It's about a woman who understood that education is the most valuable investment anyone can make. Madame Sinclair invested her money in creating a foundation that teaches people to fish rather than just giving them fish. That's sustainable wealth creation. And it's working, the journalist noted, gesturing around the bustling hotel. I've been tracking the economic impact. The hotel restoration has created 47 jobs. The Literacy Center serves over 200 students per month, and 5 new small businesses have started in this neighborhood since the program launched. The ripple effects of one woman's financial wisdom are remarkable. After the journalist left, the gang took a final walk through the hotel, savoring their success. They passed through the lobby where they'd first encountered the phantom investor, climbed the grand staircase where coins had rained down, and visited the vault where they'd discovered the truth about Madame Sinclair's fortune. This hotel has taught us more than any single mystery before, Fred observed. It's taught us about economics, yes, but also about vision, patience, and the difference between being rich and being wealthy. Being rich is having money, Daphne said thoughtfully. Being wealthy is having resources, knowledge, and the ability to create value. Madame Sinclair was wealthy in every sense of the word, and she wanted others to be wealthy too, Velma added. That's the mark of true success, when your achievements lift others up rather than just elevating yourself. They returned to the lobby where Scooby and Shaggy were closing up their shop for the day, carefully counting the cash drawer and filling out their daily sales report with the kind of attention to detail that would have seemed impossible 3 months earlier. Day 1 revenue, $847, Shaggy announced proudly. Food costs, $254. Labor costs, $180. Net profit, $413. And we're putting $82.60 directly into savings before we even think about paying ourselves. That's perfect execution of a business plan, Velma approved. I'm genuinely impressed, you two. Like, we learned from the best, Shaggy said, gesturing to a framed photograph on the shop's wall, a picture of young Evangeline Sinclair in her maid-s uniform, with a caption underneath. She started with nothing and built an empire. So can you. As the sun set over the Grandview Grand Hotel, casting golden light through the restored windows, the gang gathered one last time in the lobby. So, Fred said, what's our next mystery? Whatever it is, Daphne replied. I hope it teaches us half as much as this one did. Rand has Randwiches. Scooby added hopefully. Everyone laughed, and as they headed toward the mystery machine, Mr. Pemberton called out to them, "Mystery Inc. One more thing. The Foundation's S Board wants to know if you'd be willing to serve as youth ambassadors for the financial literacy program. Travel to other cities, help solve mysteries, and teach young people about financial responsibility along the way. It would be paid, of course, with benefits and a retirement savings plan." The gang exchanged glances. Then Fred smiled. "Mr. Pemberton, I think we'd be honored. After all, Madame Sinclair taught us that the greatest treasure is knowledge, and the greatest purpose is sharing that knowledge with others." "Then it's settled," Mr. Pemberton said with satisfaction. "Mystery Inc. is officially part of the Sinclair Foundation family." As they drove away from the hotel, the Scooby Snack Shack sign glowing warmly in the twilight, Velma pulled up a financial projection on her tablet. "You know," she said thoughtfully, "if we accept the Foundation's offer and invest our salaries wisely, following Madame Sinclair's principles of saving and compound interest, we could each be financially independent by the time we're 35. Not millionaires necessarily, but secure, with the freedom to pursue whatever we want. Financial independence," Fred said, testing the words. "I like the sound of that." "Me too," Daphne agreed. "And I like that we'd earn it the right way through work, wisdom, and helping others." "Like, I never thought I'd say this," Shaggy admitted from the back of the van, "but I'm actually excited about budgeting and saving and all that stuff. It's like a mystery you solve every month. Can we spend less than we earn? Can we invest a little bit more? Can we make our money work for us? Ristery Roni." Scooby barked happily. As the mystery machine disappeared into the night, heading toward their next adventure, the lights of the Grandview Grand Hotel continued to shine a beacon of hope, education, and the enduring power of financial wisdom. Madame Evangeline Sinclair had started with nothing and built an empire. She'd turned that empire into a foundation that would help thousands of people for generations to come. She'd taught that wealth isn't about greed, but about knowledge, discipline, and using your resources to create opportunities for yourself and others. And thanks to one haunted hotel, one elaborate treasure hunt, and one gang of meddling kids and their dog, that message would continue to spread, one mystery, one lesson, and one wise financial decision at a time. The millionaire's secret of the haunted hotel wasn't hidden in the walls or buried in a vault. It was hidden in plain sight, in principles as simple as they were powerful. Earn, save, invest, learn, and lift others up as you climb. And now, thanks to Mystery Inc., that secret was a secret no more.